In the 1930s, America's heartland faced its greatest trial, the Dust Bowl, a vast stretch of farmland stripped bare by years of overfarming, poor soil practices, and the greed of those hoping to strike it rich in a land they believed could never fail. Winds rose, carrying black clouds across the plains. Day turned to night. The air itself became an enemy. Then came the drought. Crops failed, the earth turned to dust, and it struck at the worst time, in the grip of the Great Depression. Families, already on the edge, saw homes buried, livestock lost, and towns abandoned. It was more than weather. It was disaster on a scale the nation had never seen, a storm that reshaped the land and the lives of all who called it home.
Long before the Dust Bowl, the American Midwest was seen as the land of opportunity, vast, fertile, and thanks to the Homestead Act of 1862, available to anyone willing to work it. For a small fee and a commitment to live on and farm the land for 5 years, settlers, both Americans and newly arrived immigrants, could claim 160 acres as their own. The railroads made it possible. Before their arrival, transporting crops to market was slow and costly. The new rail lines linked these farms to buyers across the country and even overseas, transforming the Midwest into the nation's breadbasket. While there wasn't a single price surge that started the migration, the decades after the Civil War and the golden age of American agriculture in the early 1900s brought steady profits, drawing more farmers to the plains. Then came the peak. In 1920, grain prices hit their highest point of the decade, fueled by lingering demand from a war-torn Europe still struggling to feed itself, and by years of government price guarantees during World War I. Farmers expanded rapidly, borrowing heavily to increase production. But the boom didn't last. By 1921, European agriculture had recovered, government support ended, and a global recession set in. Prices collapsed, debts piled up, and the agricultural depression began, nearly a decade before the first dust storm. In desperation, farmers adopted what seemed a logical solution: plant more wheat to offset the loss of income. This began the Great Plow-Up, an unprecedented expansion that ripped up millions of acres of native prairie grass. Mechanization fueled the frenzy. Gasoline-powered tractors and combine harvesters allowed farmers to plow more land than ever before. With prices low and debts high, every acre was pushed into production. The 1920s brought unusually high rainfall, misleading farmers into thinking the semi-arid plains could sustain this level of agriculture indefinitely. During the Great Plow-Up of the 1920s, farmers spent recklessly, buying new tractors, cars, and land, convinced the good rains and high prices would never end. But the boom was built on sand, and the bill would soon come due. The popular saying, "Rain follows the plow," took root, a dangerously false belief that would prove catastrophic when the rain stopped and the winds began. In the summer of 1931, the rain stopped. The wet cycle had ended, and a historic drought began. The crops failed. The sun baked the now unprotected topsoil into a fine, weightless powder. The winds, which had always swept across the plains, now had nothing to hold them back. In 1932, the U.S. Weather Bureau reported 14 major dust storms. The next year, there were 38. The black blizzards had begun. These were no ordinary storms. They were rolling walls of earth, thousands of feet high. On May 9, 1934, a massive 2-day storm scooped up 350 million tons of soil from the plains. The storm blanketed Chicago, dropping an estimated 12 million tons of dust on the city, 4 pounds for every resident. It moved east, darkening the skies over Buffalo, Boston, and New York City. It even sifted through the windows of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., a gritty testament to the crisis. But the single worst day was April 14, 1935, a date that would be forever known as Black Sunday. A colossal wall of dust and static electricity rolled across the region, turning day into an absolute, terrifying night. It was this event that prompted an Associated Press reporter to coin the term that would define the era, the Dust Bowl. Amid the storms and drought, the plains faced another plague. Jackrabbits multiplied in staggering numbers, raiding fields already crippled by dust. At the same time, clouds of grasshoppers darkened the skies, consuming entire fields in hours. Their jaws chewed through wheat, corn, and even wooden fence posts, leaving behind ruin. From 1931 through 1935, these infestations struck again and again, piling devastation upon a land already brought to its knees. Inside, families fought a losing battle. They sealed doors and windows with adhesive tape and hung wet sheets, but the fine dust still coated every surface. Food had a constant crunch of grit. The most severe health crisis was dust pneumonia, a respiratory ailment from inhaling the sharp, silicate-filled dust that proved fatal for hundreds, especially children. For those in the rural areas in states like Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, life became a nightmare. The dust was inescapable, piling in drifts against homes, burying fences and farm machinery. Static electricity in the air was so strong it could short out car engines and knock a man to the ground. With their farms and livelihoods buried, a great migration began. By 1936, the crisis was in full swing. 1/4 of the population of the plains had fled. In total, 2.5 million Americans became domestic refugees, the largest migration in the nation's history. Derisively nicknamed Okies, regardless of their home state, they packed their lives onto jalopies and headed west on Route 66. They were chasing a rumor of work in California, but were met with hostility and signs that read, "No jobs for Okies here." This human tragedy was documented by photographers of the Farm Security Administration, like Dorothea Lange. Her iconic 1936 photograph, Migrant Mother, captured the fear, dignity, and despair of a generation that had lost everything. In Washington, the disaster finally spurred action. Soil scientist Hugh Hammond Bennett had been warning of this for years. On April 19, 1935, Bennett addressed a congressional committee, expertly timing his testimony with the arrival of the Black Sunday storm clouds over the Capitol. As the sky grew dark, he declared, "This, gentlemen, is what I'm talking about." Congress listened. Within days, they passed the Soil Conservation Act of 1935, creating the Soil Conservation Service. It was a national acknowledgement that the disaster was man-made and required a man-made solution. The SCS went to work, teaching farmers new techniques like contour plowing, terracing, and crop rotation to anchor the soil. The government also launched the Great Plains Shelter Belt Project, planting over 200 million trees from Canada to Texas to act as a massive windbreak. The final chapter of the Dust Bowl was written by another world crisis. With the start of World War II, the same rains that renewed the land also brought a renewed demand for wheat, and the industrial boom of the war effort created jobs, ending the Great Depression and the migrant crisis. The Dust Bowl was a decade of painful lessons. It taught America that its resources were not limitless and that human action could have devastating environmental consequences. It stands as a reminder of the delicate pact between humanity and the land we call home. The families who endured the Dust Bowl carried its scars across generations, but also its hard-earned wisdom. Their story is more than history. It is a living reminder, a warning of nature's limits, and a guide to the responsibility we share in protecting the land we call home.